Is my mic? Okay. I can shout anyway. I'll do both. Thanks. I'm just going to do a bit of a scene set, really, and sort of so you know where I'm coming from. My name's Neil Pennington. I spent a lot of time in the energy industry. As of about, I guess the most interesting bits of that were I ran the smart metering program as a program director for npower for 4 years. When I got involved in npower, it was a £6 million project with 3 people, and when I transferred out of that, it was a £250 million and 200 people project. And at the time also I had responsibility for looking about what we're going to do with IoT, so I did this deal with Nest, brought them into the UK, the Nest learning thermostat, as UK, the Netherlands and Germany. I then went into innovation, basically reporting into Germany but also the UK, and was UK Innovation Director. Now during that time, probably about 3 years ago, we came across some blockchain use cases, and there were 3 that I got involved in. One was peer-to-peer energy trading, one was electric vehicles, and the other one was around fintech or payments for people, vulnerable customers on universal credit or moving into universal credit out on benefits effectively. The peer-to-peer became Conjure in Germany. The electric vehicle thing became something called share and charge, which is quite good actually, because typically energy companies go, oh, electric vehicles, we shove shit in the ground, let's go bang, there's a charging station. But actually the idea that a car can be a mobile wallet, a mobile payment wallet on a blockchain, I thought was quite interesting as a thought process. I left about a couple of years ago. I went over to New York. I started working on sort of digital identity. I got involved in something called ID 2020, which is a UN thing. I also work with DISC, which is the company that's in Greater Manchester, which has about 200 people who have their benefits paid onto a private permission distributed ledger platform, and can manage their lives and pay for their housing, their energy, etc. using that. I also have an interest in, I work with Rivets, which ICO'd about a year ago. They do blockchain attestation of the trusted execution environment on your mobile phone, and that's an app that is helping the Commonwealth deal with cross-border crime. I'm also a member of the Energy Web Foundation, which is a non-profit looking at building the open source blockchain for the energy market, of which I'll kind of hint at, but I'm not trying to sell it because effectively it's non-profit anyway, and it's a foundation. I'm also involved in kind of helping Mauritius and other countries think about virtual currencies as a sort of a practical advisor as opposed to a virtual currency advisor. So that's kind of where I come from. So this is just scene setting, okay? So effectively, if we think about the energy market or the electricity structure, it's like this, and it's been like this since about 1920. You know, I mean, energy it's quite interesting. It's a bit like a Back to the Future thing, you know. And if you look at 1880, 1890, wherever you generated energy, it was actually produced and consumed at the same place. We decided we'd go for a massive kind of grid structure, we'd centralize it, and that was kind of rolling into the industrial economy. And it's been like this. And you know, very centrally dispatched, decisions made with pretty imperfect information, looking at grid scale assets. And basically, Joe Blogs, consumers are price takers really. It's like trying to get the cheapest tariff and not really participating in the future of the energy market. And regulation pretty much has been traditionally thinking about broadly 3 things. They talk about the trilemma. They're trying to balance, you know, energy security with environmental sustainability and, you know, a fair price. Well, actually, it means the lowest price possibly, and protecting the fuel pool. And regulators and energy companies try and deal with that. So, broadly current situation, that's the kind of way it has been today. But as we all know, and I don't want to preach to the choir here, something big is happening, right? And this is what's happening. So you've got an incumbent system, an incumbent way of doing things, and we've got a world where everybody is more interconnected than ever. My son, and I won't say how old he is because it dates me, but says there's a grey hair, has got more in common with somebody from Singapore that he plays Call of Duty with than he has with the next door neighbour. You know, new communities are forming left, right, and centre. You know, I belong to the Bitcoin powwow, the ICO powwow, the ETH powwow on WhatsApp. I go to sleep, I wake up, and there are 242 messages on WhatsApp where people are just trading information. And I interact more with those two than I do with it's probably because I'm a sad antisocial individual, but, you know, and also that people are demanding to work one-to-one with each other on a global basis. And not only that, they are being enabled by two particular pieces of technology that is allowing that to happen. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., and the blockchain. Now, when I do blockchain to people who don't know anything about blockchain, which I'm not handing to you, I try and stay away from too much about the tech and just say, do you believe that that world that I've just pictured about in connectivity is going to reverse, despite the likes of Trump and etc. trying to kind of reverse globalization? And if you don't believe and you think that's the direction of travel, then the world is becoming more decentralized. And blockchain is an example of that decentralized movement. You know, and I say Bitcoin and Ethereum, they may be the Netscape and the AOL of this world, but it's going in that direction. And so you've got this kind of incumbent systems, and we'll talk about the energy system today, suddenly coming under pressure from people's expectations and wanting a fair deal and wanting to participate and be heard and work one-to-one with each other, enabled by technology. And that, I think, and I'm sure as we sit down and talk, believe that that world is changing, it's already changed, and it's changed forever. It's just a question of how fast and in what shape is that change going to go. And it allows us to get to this, and this is my view of a future energy system. It's not top-down, it is millions and potentially billions of participants at the grid edge, the house, with artificial intelligence, machine learning, making optimal decisions about its position, almost like an internal market, acting with neighbours, acting in streets, and we're talking devices being everything from lights, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, your vehicle, etc., acting recursively upwards into the future energy system. And I think that's kind of where we're going. Millions of participants driving this. And that's a massive challenge for a system which has been structured on an engineering basis, on a centralized basis, top-down. And it's going to explode. And you kind of come into, I don't bore you with all this kind of stuff, but you kind of come into 5 broadly new areas, really. It's not just about the trilemma. It is about defensibility, because something I didn't talk about in that circle of people was that people have concerns. They feel as though they're being attacked. They feel as though there's been terrorist attacks. There've been hacks on Ukraine power stations. You know, this whole thing around give me something that is resilient, allows participation, is digitized, and allows people to participate. And this is I think the new world. So we've got a bit of a picture about a potential use case, an example of an existing prosumer use case. So let's just get into a kind of a transactive peer-to-peer energy trade. And that's broadly the kind of structure. We could draw this in many different ways, and there will be many, many use cases. But you have somebody with panels, batteries, etc., on their house. And you have, and actually it's like producer and consumer, but actually we could probably draw it as both producing and consuming, and then transacting with each other, and then and actually an incentive for them to transact through some kind of tokenization. Now that's called an energy coin. I prefer to call it like a token. It's a utility token for the platform, governed through some kind of smart contract. And that's the sort of I'm looking at my colleagues. You're not in. You're kind of okay with that, aren't you?
Yes,
sorry.
Am I in the right place?
I know we're going to have some different. There are many different use cases, but that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Now, when we come to the kind of issue about how we're going to make that happen, how we're going to make this kind of happen, the kind of infrastructure, the kind of blockchain, you have artificial intelligence at the grid edge, and then a blockchain that communicates and transfers data. There's a big issue about kind of putting this together. And the question, and a number of questions is, how do you get participation at large scale, globally, in a world that has to have rules based within it, right? Because this is critical national infrastructure. And so we'd like to go, in a way that we would like to go to, I don't know, like a big open public kind of blockchain, and ultimately I think that's where it goes. In order to get governments and regulators and participants to start to make that change, there has to be some recognition, and we're going to get into that discussion a bit later, around a kind of rules that allow this grid edge stuff to start combining up in a way that doesn't compromise the performance of the system. And it allows us to balance and allows us to go there. So there are a whole bunch of different companies now emerging that are trying to tackle that problem and tackling that problem in a different way. I mentioned share and charge. People have probably heard of Power Ledger, that's in Australia. That's all about transactive energy between renewable generators. And Electron, who are looking to build a kind of a flexibility platform and also try and solve the issue around transferring of assets around. Now, there is an issue around this, and that my personal point of view is that this will struggle to scale in a sense, because what you've got is you've got people trying to build the app and the blockchain layer. Because, if you like, the ubiquitous blockchain layer doesn't exist at the moment. And so that gives a problem about scaling. So I'm going to talk to you very quickly about the Energy Web Foundation and then shut up in a minute. So this has been noticed by a group of people that started off with the Rocky Mountain Institute out of Colorado, a big energy think tank, and Bridge Singularity out of Switzerland, wired into Parity and Socket. So Gav Wood and the Ethereum guys are massively involved in the Energy Web Foundation, and they went on a journey to create a year ago a non-profit foundation. And over the course of the year, there are now all of these people are now affiliates of the Energy Web Foundation. And the principle is, no one should own the blockchain. So we should have an open sourced blockchain with governance designed in, with the rules designed in, such that it just operates. And then people can build their own platforms, build their own apps on the top of that. So it's a bit of a complicated diagram. The aim is that in the middle, Energy Web Foundation, in a fully governed, democratized way, and at the moment it's in the test network stage. It doesn't go live properly until about a year's time. Will be a public open source blockchain, governance designed in, maybe some framework things, open source smart contract frameworks, and D3A is a sort of a transactive agent at an area. Get that sorted out, develop it together, proof of authority, I'll come up with the building blocks, and that allows devices to be connected into it, and it allows people to get on with building the apps that are going to really make the difference and have some commercial benefit. And that's the kind of foundation's aim. And declaring interest, I work with them about a couple of days a month. But as somebody who's been in the energy industry for a while, I kind of go, well, some kind of consortium's got to appear if we're going to start together tackling this kind of problem. And I think that's not a bad kind of way to go. And for blockchain people in here, you can read that, and it's always like this is the most complicated slide, isn't it? But this is the way it's being built. So basically, it's built on the Ethereum software stack with proof of authority. So basically, the idea is, and the way it's being structured is, known permission validators like Shell, like the big guys, running a proof of authority node. Faster block times with a test network, a light client being developed that can sit in every house and have part of the blockchain on it. The idea that there can be secret transactions. So effectively, a regulator might write a smart contract onto the blockchain, and we've got the trillion regulator involved in writing smart contracts, actually, because I think that's where regulators go. What does a regulator do in 5 years' time? Just write smart contracts, and then sit back and just monitor the transparency of it. However, a secret smart contract, a secret transaction, is the rules will be written on a smart contract. They are there to be seen, but the nature of the trade might not be transparent. because it's you know, we talk it's price sensitive stuff. But provided they've obeyed the right rules, then okay, we're fine, because then it's not compromising the structure of the market. This is where my coding knowledge goes. So basically, I understand that Solidity is a really difficult language, so they've actually started using WebAssembly language, which we use more C++, which starts to make it more accessible to work on the Ethereum stack. And then, as we start to go, scaling. So scaling is to bring, so the first instances of Polkadot and Raven will be applied into the energy web chain, which means that when people talk about transactions per second and they say that Ethereum is at 20 transactions per second, already in the test network it's at like 7,500 transactions per second. When you start to bring Polkadot in, the projection is that we'll go to 240,000 transactions per second. If you structure it correctly, if you bring Raiden in and start to look at the whole payment infrastructure, you can get it to 64 million transactions per second. Not tomorrow, but maybe in a couple of years' time. And it's very, very clear that, you know, I go over to Berlin and work with these guys, you know, Gab Wood's sitting there, Yutta's sitting there, there's Aaron Buchanan from Web 3.0. Everybody is in there in that ecosystem collaborating together on making this Ethereum stack just go up in terms of enhancements. Now it's not sorted, it's all in, everybody's working together. As I say, it's not been released yet, it's in a test network. There's a governance paper, we're trying to figure out, you know, how do you make sure you can't get people exercising market power in this. You know, you've got the governance at the validator layer, the governance at the application layer, emergency, sort of code writing, etc. And that's all just being developed. But there's a potential way of trying to bring this stuff together. Despite all of that, though, this is, you're looking at the future. We still face a bunch of issues, and we've been trading as panelists kind of questions or setting out some of the tricky issues that we all kind of have to deal with, both from an energy market perspective and from an infrastructure perspective. So look, I won't. Do you want me to read them out? Oh, yeah, we can go through them in a bit. But that hopefully I've laid out a little bit of the kind of landscape from an energy perspective. Massively centralized decision-making process system working with imperfect information, probably making pretty shit decisions when it comes to the energy consumer, right? Ultimately, I'm being recorded, I shouldn't have said that. But actually, a world where we all want to participate. And just to round it off very quickly, when I was in Berlin recently, there was a guy called Tom Dinwoody from the Rocky Mountain Institute, who's a very well-respected sort of kind of climate change guy, and he gave a great talk where he stood up and said, look, I want to give you a thesis. The thesis is we can keep the temperature of the world down to 1.5 degrees centigrade rise. I'm going to tell you about my research, and I'm going to come with the solution that I think is the answer. And he's not a blockchain evangelist at all. I went through this kind of research thing, and he said, actually, we're on the course for 3 degrees or 4 degrees, and the world is screwed, to be honest. I was going to use the F word. He said, however, if you look at where the problem's coming from, 70% of it comes from the energy market, 30% from land use. You know, he's talking about, you know, methane and, you know, cows and etc. It says 70% from the energy market. And in his opinion, the only way that we're going to stop and prevent climate change is to have near 100% renewables at the grid edge, making optimal decisions and trading on a second-by-second, minute-by-minute basis, acting recursively all the way up. And his view is the only way we're going to do that, if you want this to actually work in unison, is with blockchain technology, in whatever shape or form that is. And we haven't got long to do it. And I've not really necessarily been a big climate change, I know we all worry about it, a big climate change evangelist banging the drum, but I just kind of sat there and went, actually this is quite a big moment. You know, and a boring world like the energy market and the energy system, if you start to bring this technology, our technology as a community together, we can have a really kind of massive impact. So that's me.